The first time I met Grace was next to my dying mom's bed. Her smile was warm and her voice was soothing, a beacon of hope amidst the beeping machines and sterile smell of the hospital room. Grace seemed friendly, a comforting presence in our darkest hours. But as she clasped my mom's hand and spoke soft words of reassurance, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something lurking beneath that kind exterior, something she was hiding. I'm an only son, and I was just 17 when my mom died from ovarian cancer. Watching her fade away was the hardest thing I'd ever experienced. My parents had been together since college, practically inseparable, with my dad being just a month older than her. Her death shattered him. I saw the light dim in his eyes, the once strong and vibrant man reduced to a shadow of his former self. He put on a brave face for me, but the pain was clear in every weary step he took. Grace was my mom's nurse during those final heartbreaking days at the hospital. She had a way about her that immediately put my dad at ease. Her gentle touch and soft-spoken words seemed to provide some comfort. She was always there, ready with a tissue, a hug, or just a listening ear. Grace played all the right notes to gain my dad's trust, showing up when he needed support the most. It was as if she knew exactly what to say and do to weave herself into the fabric of our lives. I was old enough to sense that Grace was just trying to weasel her way into getting my dad's resources, but it was up to him if he wanted to be in a relationship with her. My dad mourned my mom for a year, and during that time, Grace would check in on him by phone every month or so. In my opinion, she was scoping out the possibility of sinking her hooks into him, testing the waters to see if he was ready to let someone new into his life. Each call was a calculated move, a step closer to her goal. After a year passed, Grace took the gloves off and went hard after my dad. She was only 40 when they started seeing each other. Despite my misgivings, I couldn't ignore the fact that my dad seemed less depressed with her around. He smiled a bit more, laughed occasionally, and started taking an interest in life again. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, hoping that maybe she had genuine feelings for him. But deep down, I never trusted her. There was always that nagging feeling in my gut that she was playing a long game, waiting for the right moment to secure her place in our lives. My father had been a very successful banker during his career and had amassed quite a portfolio of wealth. It didn't take long, just 6 months of dating, before Grace and my father were married. The wedding was a small, subdued affair reflecting my dad's ongoing grief. Grace wore a modest dress and tried to keep things low-key, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was celebrating more than just a marriage. As they exchanged vows, I stood by, silent and watchful, wondering what her next move would be, now that she had secured her position in our family. Despite the new marriage, my dad never really got over my mom. He grew weaker and weaker, even though he was only 57. His once vibrant energy drained away, leaving behind a frail shell of the man I had known. Grace did her best to care for him, but it was clear she was more interested in the stability of her newfound wealth than in my dad's declining health. By the time he turned 59, he was gone, leaving a void that no amount of Grace's feigned sympathy could ever fill. Of course, I've seen lots of Hollywood movies, so I considered the conspiracy theory that maybe my dad's nurse wife poisoned him and made him sign over all his money to her, but I honestly didn't think that's what happened. My dad's decline was gradual, and grief had taken its toll. Other relatives didn't like Grace either, but they knew my dad had been utterly broken by my mom's death. Long story short, my dad bequeathed his 5-bedroom house to me, even though I wasn't expecting it and hadn't asked for it. He left about 80% of his existing money to Grace, which amounted to several hundreds of thousands of dollars. Grace tried to put on a friendly front, but I could tell she was angry as hell that she didn't get my dad's house too. That belonged to me, and I had the legal papers to prove it. During the first few months after my dad's death, I had the nauseating, creepy experience of knowing that Grace was trying to feel me out, to see if I might be interested in a relationship with her. One evening, as I sat in the living room, she entered wearing a dress that was far too revealing for a grieving widow. She leaned in close, her breath warm on my ear, and whispered, "We're the only ones left now. We could comfort each other." I recoiled, making some excuse to leave the room. Calling it gross would be an understatement. Grace stayed at the house because, over the last 3 years, she had gotten used to living there and acting like she owned it. And even though I officially owned it, I was away at college and only visited once every couple of months. I think Grace gradually forgot that she really had no legal right to the house. She probably believed that, since I never asked her for any of the hundreds of thousands of my dad's dollars she now had, I was somehow independently wealthy and would eventually just give up my house to her. I knew I'd eventually drop a bomb on this whole situation when she started dating some new guy only 5 months after my dad was in the ground. When I came home from college after graduating, she and her new boyfriend, who was only a few years older than me, were acting like I was a guest in my own house and that they owned it. They lounged on the couch, laughing and drinking wine, while I stood awkwardly in the doorway wondering how long I'd have to keep up the charade. I played along. Grace told me she gave away my PlayStation 4 to Ivan's cousin because I'm too old to play with video games. I didn't even know this guy, and she gave my PS4 away. She also said that she and Ivan were getting married because I just can't mourn your father forever. I have to move on with life. The nerve of her, I thought, but I kept my expression neutral, hiding the rage simmering beneath the surface. I smiled, but I knew what I had to do eventually. I told her that I graduated from college and already secured employment with a local firm and will soon find a new place to live. She looked thrilled, especially at the part where it seemed like I'd soon have a new place to live. In a patronizing way, she told me, "You always have a place in our house, though. You are welcome to stay whenever you please." Thanks, Grace. Really generous of you. She said it was wonderful because she intended to go to her homeland to have a wedding with Ivan and afterward have her honeymoon. She assured me it was a local affair. Otherwise, I'd invite you. She asked me if I could watch the house for her. Watch my own house? Sure. She and her fiancé left for their trip, and I immediately put out advertisements on rental websites offering to lease my house. I hired movers to pack up all of Grace's furniture and possessions and put them into a storage rental facility. I retained all of my parents' furniture that they had before my dad met Grace. It was a meticulous operation, but satisfying in a way that I hadn't expected. Within days, I was inundated with dozens of inquiries regarding my amazing furnished house with fantastic views. I rented it to a wonderful young family. They paid me their first and last month's rent and signed a lease for a year. I warned them about my crazy stepmom, who thought this was her house, but I presented them with contact information from my lawyer in case they needed any assurance that I was on the level. When Grace came back, she was livid. I still remember the day she returned, expecting to walk back into her fantasy life. Instead, she found the locks changed, her belongings gone, and a new family living in what she thought was her house. She tried to shriek and cause trouble, but my lawyer quickly shut her down without me having to speak to her. The look on her face when she realized she had no legal standing was priceless. From what I hear, she and her trash husband left the country. I assume they're blowing through my dad's money and will soon be broke, like people usually become when they taste a little bit of what they think is the good life. Maybe Grace will go and try to exploit some other lonely man into giving her his money. Meanwhile, the house I rent out is generating so much money that I not only help pay for my cousin's college, but also moved into a larger apartment with my fiancé. I love my job. But really, I could survive solely on renting my dad's old house. It's ironic. If Grace had only been cooler and nicer, I might have let her stay at the house just to be a good sport. To make the ending even more satisfying, I bought another PS4. Even though I didn't use my old one that much, it didn't matter. It wasn't for Grace to give away. You don't give away other people's things, you give away your own things. Which is why I chose to kick Grace out of my house, because it's mine, and I decide who stays there. Even after all these years, I couldn't shake the suspicion that my stepmom was responsible for my parents' deaths, both occurring under her watch, but without evidence. It's a haunting thought that I push away. Dwelling on it only distracts me from the future I need to build. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please like if you did, and subscribe to watch my future videos.